You know what's fascinating about people who ride motorcycles? They almost never talk about the real reason riding makes them feel better. Ask most riders why they ride, and they'll say something like the freedom or the adrenaline rush. And sure, both of those things are real, but they're also just the surface. Underneath, something far more interesting is happening inside their brains, and most of them have absolutely no idea it's there. Neuroscientists have started paying serious attention to what motorcycling actually does to the brain. Not what it feels like, what it does. And what they keep finding doesn't match what most people, riders and non-riders alike, would expect. Here are 5 hidden psychological benefits of riding motorcycles, the ones backed by actual neuroscience, the ones no one in the community really talks about, and the ones that might permanently change how you think about 2 wheels. The first one, riding forces your anxiety brain offline without you even trying. Here's something most people have never heard about their own mind. There's a network in your brain called the default mode network, the DMN. It's the system that activates when you're not engaged in anything demanding, when you're lying awake at 2 a.m. replaying a conversation that happened 3 years ago, when your brain keeps circling back to a mistake, a worry, a version of something that might go wrong. Neuroscientists describe the DMN as the core driver of rumination, those repetitive self-referential thought loops that fuel anxiety and depression. It's not dramatic, it's quiet, it's the voice that just won't stop. And here's what makes riding different from almost everything else. The cognitive demand of riding a motorcycle is high enough that it forces the DMN completely offline. Not because you're trying to clear your head, not because you're breathing deeply, because your brain doesn't have the processing bandwidth to run both systems at once. This isn't a metaphor. EEG studies show that high-demand attention tasks suppress DMN activity in measurable, reproducible ways. Riding delivers exactly those conditions simultaneously. Lane awareness, hazard detection, throttle control, balance, spatial tracking, all firing at the same time. Sometimes the most effective mental reset isn't meditation or journaling. It's 22 minutes on a bike, not because it solves anything, because it forces the brain to take a complete break from itself. The second benefit is something researchers actually measured, and it's far more specific than riding reduces stress. In 2019, a team of neuroscientists from UCLA's Semel Institute for Neuroscience and Human Behavior ran a neurobiological study of motorcycle riding. They tracked participants' brain activity and hormone levels before, during, and after 3 separate conditions: riding a motorcycle, driving a car, and resting. You've probably heard the general claim that riding lowers stress. That's true, but here's what most people completely miss. The study didn't just find lower cortisol, it found a measurable shift in the ratio of cortisol to DHEAS. Here's why that distinction matters. DHEAS is a neuroprotective hormone. It actively buffers the brain against the long-term damage that chronic cortisol exposure causes. It's tied to cognitive resilience, emotional regulation, and long-term neurological health. Participants experienced a 28% decrease in cortisol levels after a single 20-minute ride. Shifting that ratio isn't a temporary mood lift, it's a signal of genuine biological recalibration happening at the hormonal level, and it kicked in within the first 20 minutes of riding. That's not stress relief, that's your neurochemistry resetting. The third benefit is probably the strangest one. Brain skills from riding transfer into abilities that have nothing to do with motorcycles. A Japanese research team ran a controlled study. One group rode motorcycles daily for 2 months. The control group didn't change anything. At the end of the study, the riding group showed significant improvements in visuospatial cognition, the ability to mentally rotate objects, track moving targets, and process 3-dimensional space in real time. That part might make sense, but here's where it gets genuinely surprising. The researchers found what they called a far transfer effect. The cognitive improvements didn't stay inside riding-related tasks. They extended into working memory, semantic memory, and episodic memory, functions that have no obvious connection to being on a bike at all. The explanation: the neural circuits that riding continuously fires, real-time spatial calculation, hazard anticipation, split-second motor decisions, appear to cross-wire with other cognitive systems in the brain. You're not just getting better at riding, you're building cognitive infrastructure that carries into how you think, remember, and process information in your everyday life. 2 months of daily rides, measurable improvements across multiple unrelated cognitive domains. That's not a side effect. That's a training program most people don't know they're running. Now consider this for a moment. We tend to look at motorcycle riders from the outside and make quick assumptions. We see the gear, hear the noise, think about the risk. Most people frame riding as thrill-seeking behavior, something done in spite of good judgment, not because of it. But the neuroscience keeps pointing somewhere completely different. The riders who say a morning ride is the clearest their mind feels all day, they might not be romanticizing it. Their brains may actually be operating differently because of it. The last 2 benefits get even more specific, and one of them starts before the engine ever turns on. Benefit 4. The gear ritual is neurological. The 4th benefit happens before you even start the bike, and it's rooted in a concept called enclothed cognition. In 2012, researchers at Northwestern University published a study that quietly shifted how psychologists think about clothing. They found that what you wear doesn't only change how others perceive you, it changes your own cognition. The physical act of wearing a garment combined with the symbolic meaning that garment carries produces measurable shifts in attention span, focus, and cognitive performance. In the study, wearing a lab coat described as a doctor's coat significantly improved sustained attention. The exact same coat described as a painter's smock did not. Same garment, different meaning, different brain. Now apply that directly to the ritual of gearing up to ride. The jacket, the gloves, the helmet, each piece carries a specific, deeply loaded symbolic meaning: competence, alertness, readiness for consequence. And the act of putting it on, methodically, every single time before every single ride, is doing something targeted to your prefrontal cortex before you've even touched the throttle. Riders often describe how suiting up shifts their mindset almost immediately. That's not a placebo. That's enclothed cognition running exactly as the research predicts. Your gear is a neurological on switch. Most riders have been using it for years without knowing what it actually is. The 5th benefit is the most provocative one, and it's the reason scooters simply don't deliver the same result. Japanese researchers attached wearable near-infrared brain imaging devices to actual riders and sent them onto real roads. They were measuring activity in the DLPFC, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the region most associated with executive function, working memory, complex planning, and high-level decision-making, the command center of the brain. The finding was unambiguous. DLPFC activation was significantly higher in riders of manual road motorcycles than in scooter riders, consistently across all conditions tested. The mechanism is straightforward. A manual motorcycle demands simultaneous coordination of clutch input, gear selection, throttle modulation, body weight positioning, and full environmental scanning. A scooter automates most of that, and the automation, which feels more convenient, more comfortable, quietly removes the cognitive load that makes the activity neurologically valuable in the first place. The inconvenience is the benefit. The mental complexity of managing a real manual bike is exactly what exercises the prefrontal cortex. Every gear change is a cognitive rep. Every corner is a decision tree. So when a rider tells you that riding keeps their mind sharp, the science says they're not wrong. They're just not giving themselves enough credit for exactly how precise that mechanism actually is. Here's what's worth sitting with. Motorcycle riding has always been described in emotional language: freedom, escape, adrenaline, and none of that is inaccurate. But those words are describing the feeling of something the brain is doing at a completely different level. The neuroscience keeps returning to the same underlying pattern. Riding creates a rare combination of conditions the modern human brain almost never encounters naturally: high cognitive demand with low emotional noise, sensory engagement without overstimulation, physical challenge with total mental presence. That combination doesn't just feel good in the moment, it recalibrates stress hormones, strengthens executive function, builds cognitive flexibility, and exercises the exact neural systems most at risk in the way most of us live now: sedentary, distracted, screen-saturated, and chronically half-present. Maybe that's what writers have always known without having the language for it. It was never really about the bike.